Ever since I started working on this, and I mean the documentary series included, a sentiment has been repeated again and again and again. Boy, I sure wish Glib wasn't a disgusting human being, cause at least their art is great. And actually kind of yeah. I know it's so easy to just go people bad, therefore the thing they make is also bad. But the fact of the matter is that for the most part, Glib manages to make some good art. There's a bunch of nice colors, interesting shapes, and they seem to master multiple styles at least to a certain extent. But like we've covered before, there's a difference between being a good artist and being a good comic artist. And Glib is an absolute dog shit comic artist. Like, let's do a quick experiment here. On screen, you'll see a conversation happen. One set of voice bubbles will have red text, the other green. Now, you would assume there are two people talking with each other, right? Alright, now here's a different frame. Here we got a voice bubble with blue text and one with green text. You would assume the blue text is now a third character, right? Or maybe, if you're feeling a little spicy, you might assume the blue text is being said by the same person who before spoke in red text, and they've now gone from, say, being angry to being sad. At the very least, you will assume a change of some sort has happened. Well, congratulations, cause you've just failed the Floraverse conversation quiz, cause the colors don't matter. Glib, or whoever else is doing the art for the individual chapters, know nothing about certain simple and sometimes unwritten rules about comic making. More times than not, character voice bubbles, the text within those bubbles, or even the entire fucking character will sometimes change colors for absolutely no reason other than the artist wanting to be fancy for the sake of it. This makes for an absolutely horrible reading experience, as we readers tend to operate subconsciously with the rules of Gestalt. And again, I have a whole video about that thing you should go check out. One of the rules of Gestalt is similarity, which is where we group things together based on shape, color, orientation, or size. So when a character keeps speaking in, say, a blue voice bubble, we associate that character with the color blue. But then, when this character suddenly changes to a red voice bubble, the rules of Gestalt have been broken, and thus you end up having to reorient yourself, which causes confusion, and if this happens enough, it leads to frustration. You see, Glib, I actually know this stuff because, unlike you, I actually completed my education within this field. I'm like you, I have the dog in me, but for a different reason. In fact, colors just change constantly, but it never reflects on what happens. A scene will all of a sudden turn red, but nothing of danger, anger, or intimacy will happen in the scene. There are no red light sources, no heat, nothing that would emit anything that we would normally associate with the color red. Heck, sometimes the change will happen mid-conversation, while nothing in the status quo has changed. It is very clear that this color change is just there because the artist wanted it. It serves no purpose, it's just there cause fuck it. Why do characters suddenly get weird angles? Why is there sometimes different art styles? Why do we sometimes get visual novels? Why do we sometimes get videos? Cause fuck it. And for normal art pieces, that's fine. But for a comic, Jesus Christ, does it make your reading experience infuriating and confusing. When we covered the webcomic There's No Such Thing as Jason, I repeated to the point where it probably got a little annoying that the biggest issue with the comic was that the story was confusing by design, and thus asked the audience to piece things together, and due to choices with the art, it made piecing this particular narrative together really hard. Because you didn't know what visual changes were due to the plot and what was there for visual flair. And it is the exact same issue here, but dialed up to 11. Like I mentioned before, I thought the fact that we were suddenly getting a visual novel was because it was a different plot, but then it suddenly is part of the main plot. I thought the part with Neon and Lily that I brought up earlier was a filler thing due to it being in a very rough style, almost as if it was just a funny little side story that the creators had come up with. But nope, it's canon, I think. And as if the art didn't make this challenge annoying enough, now you also have to deal with the whole way the story is told and how the site is constructed. Like with the creator's weird obsession with telling things out of sequence, added on top of how shitty the site is made and how terrible the art conveys the story, the fact none of the writers seem to understand proper fucking grammar, you find yourself countless times pondering if you're meant to feel as confused as you are, and if this confusion is gonna get sorted out later. You're just constantly sitting there wondering if the confusion you feel is by design or not, and I'm gonna tell you right now, it is not.
Which, may I remind you, is in a comic that starts out with 2 cheap Pokemon knockoffs trying to transport seeds from A to B.
Again, I wanna kind of preface this in that the designs of Floraverse are pretty creative. Min and Cress are kind of standard, but they are fine all things considered. The super team from Hell's side that they bump into are also pretty interesting, even though I've seen countless people call their styles derivative of things like My Little Pony, Digimon, or Pokemon. But then there are characters like, say, Andre. What the fuck am I even looking at? What is this? Now, don't get me wrong, it's cool to see something that breaks the mold when you're in a completely different world, but no one else looked like this. Or, well, that's not completely true, as later the comic will start showing off character profiles and show you shit like this and go, there are 2 characters in this image. And no, I am pretty sure it's not these 2 up here that it's referring to, and I'm even tentative to say it's the snake and the gecko down here. I honestly think it might just be this weird ooze, but even then, that's at best 1 character. Where's the second one?
I could swear that there's actually a point where the comic asks you to tell 2 blobs from one another, and I'm just sat there going, no, fuck you.
The main problem is that just like the laws about minors and consent, the Floraverse crew just keeps breaking rules. Even rules they make up themselves. Why is one thing visual novels? Why not just have it as a comic? Why is something suddenly a YouTube video when it could have just as well been a visual novel? Why use text boxes when you before used voice bubbles? At one point, they tried to establish that they use different art styles to show we're in different dimensions or something, which is cute and a very ballsy move to show that you have a lot of different styles under your belt. Except this rule gets broken time and time again, cause then it gets used for making a scene in the very same fucking chapter more spooky or angsty or whatever. Like, how are we supposed to establish a pattern if you keep breaking the pattern for no real reason other than whimsy? I read somewhere that Glib is big time inspired by the manga Usayumi Ponpon, and in that, at certain points, the protagonist's face will distort into many different things, and here the author has admitted to just doing it for his own sake. Like at one point there'll be a love triangle, so he made Ponpon's head look like a triangle to remind him. And at other times, it'll have some sort of symbolic value. But do you know why Ponpon is fantastic and Floraverse is some of the worst shit I've ever read? Cause at least in Ponpon, I can still fucking tell what's going on, cause literally everything besides Ponpon's head is realistic as hell. In Floraverse, everything is wonky, wacky, and don't seem to abide by the rules until they suddenly do, and you, as the audience, have to find your footing in a setting that's constantly changing beneath your feet.
It's like playing cards against a toddler who's making up the rules as they go. Okay, so the 2 of clubs give 2 points, but only if you pick it up as your 3rd card. Which is why when I picked it up as my 1st card, it deducted 18 points from me. Is that correct? Okay, maybe then you can explain why you having a Queen of Hearts gives you 20 points, but when I have it, it allows you to kick me in the stomach.
It's also just so fucking frustrating, bro. I complimented before that when angels showed up, everything would suddenly start breaking. Up is down, left is right, Glib is suddenly a good person. Like, shit just doesn't make any sense anymore. And that's super interesting. I love eldritch horrors that seem to fuck with the very fabric of reality. But then it just keeps doing this. It worked before because you would see the angel appear and the transition into the gibberish world would appear on the same page and it would be finished pretty quickly. But as time goes on, suddenly it'll transition mid-plot into long, never-ending gibberish segments and you would never see the angel doing it. Sometimes this glitchy, fucked up fever dream would carry on for multiple chapters. Now it's just the new norm, but only sometimes. There's absolutely no consistency to anything going on. In Across the Spider-Verse, you see multiple different art styles being used for multiple different Spider-Men, and it works because it's consistent. It would be so fucking nuts if Floraverse established that the world got snapped asunder by the angels, and so the different dimensions were shown by a consistent art style, or heck, one dimension could even be solely visual novel, one could be the YouTube videos, and one could be the oddly sexual minigame. What a cool way for you to use your artistic ability and experience using multiple different channels to tell a story that breaks the mold of normal storytelling. But they just don't do that. Or, well, as seems to be the norm with these guys' consistency, it is that at one point until it suddenly isn't for no real reason.
You know, like how Glib was initially sorry for attacking Lane, only to then walk it back and continuing to attack Lane for the stuff that Glib has actively self-admitted was true, and then said that it's all lies despite, again, admitting that it was true.
It has come up before, but I don't think anyone's gonna fight me over the fact that music is an art form, and thus, I think it is only fair that we cover the music used in Floraverse in the art segments here.
So if anyone has like an hour and a half for me to just bitch about the music, then I would greatly appreciate that, because boy!
Unlike with art, I don't actually have a whole lot of factual knowledge about it, nor do I have a degree in that field. So I probably won't be as able to properly explain why exactly I feel about the music the way I do. So I kinda hope that when I say that the music for this series is some of the worst garbage I have ever heard, we can all agree that that's the case. 'Cause my god.
It's not often that this happens, but I'm actually having a hard time figuring out what to say next, because there's just so much wrong with this that I don't even know where to start.
Like, first of all, I think we can agree that at the bare minimum music should have, well, rhythm. In fact, a definition of music is the art of arranging sounds to create some combination of form, harmony, melody, rhythm, or otherwise expressive content. And if that last thing wasn't added there at the end, this would in fact rarely ever be qualified as music. Several times there is no real rhythm, nor any harmony, and the melody is questionable at best. I sent some of this to my friend Hugo, who is an actual fucking composer, who pointed out that there's also multiple instances of the music peaking, which is when a part of the music is so loud that it hits a point where it becomes ear-searing.
And I know this is rich coming from a guy who doesn't know how to properly audio level his videos, so I just want you guys to know that I am keenly aware that I am currently throwing stones sitting comfortably in my glass house.
I cannot begin to describe just how terrible the music is. I can live with the visual novels not having a save function or whatever, that's fine. They're not super long, so you can technically torture yourself through them in one sitting. But the fact you cannot turn this ear-raping garbage off is adding insult to injury. Why is it even there in the first place? They don't even seem to use it to set the tone of a scene. You can have a super heavy scene turn into a horrible one with drama and passion, and the music won't change to fit the scene at all. So if it's not there to add anything to the scene, then why is it there? Because you want to share your musical talent with the rest of the class? Well, please don't. If getting your teeth pulled out without sedatives was put into audio form, this is what it would sound like.
If I have to give this comic a compliment, I would say that the comic has given me a whole new appreciation of music. Cause no matter how bad it is, it will at least not be this bad.
And there's just so freaking much of it. It's clear this is quantity over quality. Like, whomst the fuck gets the bright idea to make a song where the main instruments are cats meowing? And it just feels like the meowing is thrown in there at random. Like, it feels like someone played Glib the bass melody and they had no idea what was gonna happen next in the track, so they just tried to freestyle the cat sound in. Yes, Toby Fox did it with dogs in Undertale, but I'm pretty sure Toby Fox isn't even a real human. Also, what the fuck kind of bullshit samples are you using? Is this a fucking splashing sound you have sampled? What the fuck is this?
I legit can't think of a funny thing to say here. I am just stumped with how bad this is.
Now, Eevee has come under fire for sharing games with adult materials in it to minors such as this one that is, admitted by herself, a transformation kink game, all while claiming 2B's sexy appearance in Nier Automata is dishonest because no one in the game is commenting on it. Which, You're
not just wrong, you're stupid. Now wait just a minute. And you're ugly, just like your mum.
Mal got exposed for using his power of influence to get with minors whom he tried to groom and expose to bestiality porn. But hey, do you remember one of the many things Glib was accused of? Like the very first thing? No, not the one where they don't pay artists. We didn't actually cover that, but that's an entirely different thing. No, I'm talking about them exposing minors to NSFW content and seeming to get off of it. Well, surely that is so long ago, and it's not like the other main creator, Eevee, is exposing minors to NSFW content too, so surely that's not gonna show up in Floraverse as well, right? Because that would just prove that Glib hasn't learned anything, isn't being careful, and they are in fact attracted by the notion of introducing minors to sexual content. So surely they wouldn't do that, right? They wouldn't put that in their comic within the last 2 years?
Now, I put that blur there. There are just full-on nibbles on display in Floraverse, and that is if you click on the next by plot button, by the way. There's no way to fucking skip that thing. There's also just this this little snippet about how aphrodisiac works for no real reason. So I'm glad to see that the shoe still fits, huh?
The worst part is that I honestly do want to compliment the art. Cause the times where Glib calms the fuck down and focuses on telling a cohesive story, the art is really nice. I can totally see why people fell in love with their art initially. It's bright, it's colorful, but with the ability to become super dark and still fit. I don't even dislike the comic when it becomes dark and gritty, because despite the art being all cutesy wootsy, it never feels like the darkness doesn't belong. And when it doesn't just suddenly skip narratives, the pace of the presentation is really solid. Like there's this segment that feels straight out of a horror comic, where someone keeps returning to a certain place and the place is portrayed in these foreboding shadows, and the detail of the tracks moving around the place just helps convey how many times Neon has been led there. I have shat, pissed, farted and cummed all over this comic, but it is honestly... Okay, so it is mostly because the comic is actually god-awful, and secondly, because the creators are horrible people, but it is thirdly because there is actual potential here. Glib is not a bad artist. They're just doing something they don't know how to do and are thus failing miserably. And that's the infuriating thing, because you end up being kind of invested sometimes, and then Glib does Glib things, and you just sat there going,
it's not the vibe. Stop! My God.
I am gonna be a little stumped here, because the characters are actually kind of great. See, when I am dealing with a comic like this with the art style that it has, I am not expecting a deep character. I am instead interested in a rather plain but diverse cast with potential to grow. So when you introduce the comic by using the overdramatic Min hanging out with the calm Cress, you're already off to an honestly good start, as these two become the straight man and the foil. Sure, Min is annoying as hell, but that's their character, so you can give it a pass. And when the comic later introduces the team of Hellsiders, they too are simple and easy to understand. Heck, even with the snake thing introduced, they're keeping this trend going, and it works.
Honestly, if Itchy had been done for a comic, or at the very least allowed me to turn the goddamn awful music off of the visual novel, I would honestly say that was probably my favorite bit of all of Floraverse.
In other words, these characters are great for what the comic at the time is doing with them. They're simple but with room to grow, so they can be shaped by the stuff they go through. Start out small, grow out bigger.
I am honest to God confused, because I cannot think of the last time I've covered something that had such a good foundation, only for someone to take it and just fucking dunk it in the trash.
Now, I'm not gonna get into every single character, because there's a lot, and probably due to the whole open source thing, and because Glib is an actual insane person, very rarely will the characters stay consistent across chapters. But I am gonna talk about some of them, because again, they are actually pretty decent. First of all, we got Min. It is kind of funny to have a panicky, over-the-top exaggerating bird be one of the lead protagonists. While she always seems to wanna appear to know better, it is very clear she is very unwise to the world, which in turn serves as a caveat for the audience to learn about the world, which is nice. Although, you know, what we learn is incredibly little due to the writer's absolute insane incompetence in writing, but what we get, we tend to get through Min.
I also have it written in my notes that Min over-dramatizes and exaggerates to the point where stuff becomes straight up lies. So I obviously chalked that up as another Glib self-insert because, you know.
In fact, Glib apparently has multiple self-inserts, both alleged by other readers, but also apparently admitted by themselves. But we'll get back to that. For now, let's talk about Chris. They're boring. Moving on to...
Fine, jeez.
Chris is the straight man to Min's foil. Now, it seems like the writers have correlated being not unhinged is the same thing as just being plain old boring. Min will go from 1 to 100 and back again in terms of acting, which I think is supposed to be used for comedy, but it is just thoroughly unfunny, while Chris will just always be yelling at Min to get their act together. This little snot glob is pretty much akin to this emoji. And I honestly think the writers were told this, because then at some point they start going nuts with Chris and turn their plain and docile nature to 11, and it turns Chris all demonic and shit, and then they just fuck off, never to be seen again.
Or maybe they come back. I don't know. And I don't think the writers do either.
I guess we should talk about the actual protagonist of the comic, because while it is rather common that the first character you introduce to in a story are important mainstays of the story, that doesn't seem to be the case here. Or at least it very much seems like the writers just fell more in love with Bellev and the other squad members than they did Chris and Min. Because after these guys are introduced, Min and Chris are just kind of forgotten. I also bring up Bellev in particular, because this is another alleged self-insert by Glib, and you can fucking tell. While Enthusiast, this weird horse chick, and Orobas, this weird My Little Pony ripoff, shows up, they are more or less reserved as just being important characters in the porn sister comic Forbidden Flora. Anyway, Bellev is crass and a weeb. They also die apparently, but then come back somehow? Enthusiast is your typical neat freak person who demands perfection and order in everything she does, and Orobas is here too.
Seriously, I had nothing on Orobas. Or at least I didn't until I went and read the fucking Forbidden Flora comic, where a ton of personality is added to Orobas. But Forbidden Flora is supposed to be completely detached from the Floraverse reading experience, right? You wouldn't knowingly ask your underage audience to go and read a porn comic, right?
Looking at the comic's character page, it also states that the character Cayenne, Calliope, Lionel, and Jam are major characters. I will just come right out and say it, but don't even bother, because they aren't. These characters won't show up ever again after the comic starts going off the rails. I even forgot Jam was even a character before I looked at this official page. It also doesn't even include Neon and Lily, who at one point become the new protagonist of the comic. You know, until they're killed off cause Glib was being an upset poo babby about someone who liked the character, which is still some of the most petty immature shit I've seen in a long while. I was actually kind of surprised that they just killed them off actually, especially because Lily and Neon were allegedly yet more self-inserts by Glib, to the point where Glib even used the name Neon for a spell.
I'm sure you have noticed a trend by now, but this is now our third pair of protagonists where at least one of the characters is an alleged self-insert.
Now, I can piss and moan and berate this comic for how it writes the characters and how Glib is supposedly so insistent on inserting themselves in the story and centering the story around those characters, but honestly, most of these characters are actually pretty solid. When the characters get to just sit down and talk and interact with one another, they're actually kind of fun to follow. They kind of establish themselves pretty quickly with very single-noted personality types, but that just makes it fun to see them bounce off one another. When the clumsy weeb Belef has to deal with their superior, the orderly enthusiast, you just know all hell breaks loose because the characters are so dramatically opposed. It is such a shame that these established characters almost feels like they get shafted by the plot, because they're honestly the strongest thing about the comic. I would have loved to see some character growth, some serious drama happening between the characters as a result of their conflicting character traits, or just a steady cast of characters that deal with a threat. But unfortunately, it just becomes characters reacting to the world around them. An unpolished, unrefined, rushed, boring, and chaotic world without any real rhyme or reason. And this world every now and again changes the characters without warning. It even sometimes just straight up removes them. Honestly, when the plot isn't happening, that's when the comic is the most fun to read, because then you just enjoy the characters.
Imagine writing a plot so bad that the comic is actually better when the plot is not happening.
Oh, what's this? An entirely different segment? Now, initially I wanted to dedicate an entire video to Forbidden Flora, but honestly, it would just be more of me shitting all over Glib and their ilk and their horrible writing and questionable presentation. But I still do want to cover Forbidden Flora just so we can get everything covered. I know Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers should also be on the list, but I feel that's a little too far removed from Floraverse to warrant its inclusion in this video. So maybe in the future, who knows. But yeah, what is Forbidden Flora? Well, seeing that Glib and their ilk are so focused and obsessed with sex, an entirely different site was made to contain all the not safe for work art that would otherwise not fit on the regular Floraverse, even though it still makes its way in there. Every pinup, every sexual commission, and every porn story is put onto this site, no matter how much its topics are focused on minor looking characters, animals, and the weirdly big amount of egg laying.
And I want you guys to guess which of these two comics got the most consistent updates.
So, right off the bat, the first comic presented to us is a comic called Mismatch. Now, when you look at the page, you will see that Mismatch has been taken down. Instead, there's this long diatribe down here where Glib is being upset that people are supposedly misconstruing what happens in the comic to be rape when it was just a power play fantasy. In fact, for whatever weird reason, Glib has decided to triple down on this point. Instead of just going, I'm sad to see this got taken this way, but that really wasn't what I was trying to convey, they are instead flipping the fuck out about how people are willfully misunderstanding what happened, that they are lying about what happened in the comic, and are supposedly removing agency from these fictional characters one of which is so one-dimensional that literally all they are focused on is getting off by any means necessary.
Glib, your characters are not well written enough or deep enough to have agency. Shut the fuck up, please. Oh my god.
We will not be getting into mismatch just yet, because I honestly don't think I can continue talking about anything else after I have covered that. So instead, let's talk about the other content on the site. Hey, if you like, say, obviously older and mature characters having sex with small and or minor characters, then boy is this the comic for you. No fucking shit Glib is into minors being with older characters, cause I swear that's like 80% of this shit. And it's not even a size difference thing, cause at least there the smaller party just looks like a small adult. This is more akin to cup porn, and I swear it's all the fucking time. You can be mid-plot about someone who are into spanking, and all of a sudden this little asshole will pop up and get stuffed in either end. That, or you will just get straight up animal porn. Active efforts are constantly made to ensure you know these characters are more animal than they are fairy tale creatures. So much so that a character specifically referred to as a unicorn in Floraverse is now referred to as a horse.
Just because the horse is pink does not make it any less fucked. This is just animal porn with a sparkly filter on top.
Remember how I mentioned how Glib was up in arms about how people were supposedly misinterpreting their characters' actions and that in turn removed agency from the characters? Once more, I must ask, what fucking agency? The vast majority of these characters have the emotional depth of a blank sheet of paper. Their fucking anal cavities literally have more depth than they have. I am not even kidding. Because of the whole cup porn style of this stuff, more times than not, the people who get fucked will have the dick up tingling the tonsils. So many characters pops up, gets fucked, and then we move on, oftentimes with neither setup nor ending. In fact, the problem I mentioned about Floraverse, how it'll just never finish a plot and move on, is in full swing here. And the weirdest thing is that because I was reading it in terms of the date it came out in, to make sure I didn't miss shit like what was apparently the case with Floraverse, I realized nothing is ever told in chunks. Like, you will have one story, then a different one, then return to the first story again. Sometimes you'll be sat reading some serious story about Glib's real life alleged sexual assault by their parent, and then the next you'll see some weird creature get orally raped by their own tail. So you never know if we'll return to a story or if it's just skipping along cause I guess it was concluded. And you know, this is the reviewer in me talking if we look at this at a completely comic creator prowess thing. I am perfectly fine on a personal level to just skip past these plots cause boy am I just having the best of time with, say, the plot about how a couple is trying to coerce a known asexual to indulge in sexual stuff with them, or the plot where two characters are specifically turned into feral versions of themselves so we can watch them have sex.
It's just so fucking weird. If Glib truly was innocent of all the allegations, which we know they are not, but if they were, would they at least not try and distance themselves from the subject? Like, oh, I'm not into bestiality, said the creator of the comic that is nothing but that.
Here is the unfortunate kicker. When I am not being subjected to an unending slew of cup porn, weird egg-laying fetish art, and more hypnosis and aphrodisiac fetish art than you can shake a stick at, when the comic actually starts focusing on the established characters from Floraverse, it's actually not that bad. It's mostly pretty decent due to it being very lighthearted. You get to see the established characters fuck around both figuratively and literally. You get insight into who they are, how they bounce off one another and dive deeper into their relationships. So much so that this may be what people are referring to when they say Forbidden Flora is mandatory reading, because in Floraverse, these two were at first at each other's throat, and then all of a sudden, all close and intimate with one another, and that relationship seems to be built within Forbidden Flora. Heck, what happens to Belith at one point is so poorly told in the Floraverse comic, and it's just casually explained in Forbidden Flora. Which, you know, kind of sucks, because it helps you bond with and like the characters more, and it also gives off the vibe that Glib doesn't feel characters can bond without sex being directly involved.
It also feels like Glib is up to their old tricks of not completely detaching their not safe for work stuff from their safe for work stuff. It honestly feels like the safe for work stuff is just like a carrot on a stick meant to lure the unsuspecting underage audience into their not safe for work den.
Forbidden Flora just helps showing that I personally think I hit the nail on the head when I said that Floraverse was Glib and their ilk riding above their weight class. They are just not good enough writers for that. Because when they are writing just goofy characters having fun with their sexuality and relationships, it is actually not a bad read. But again, because I either think no one has actually had the balls to whack Glib over the head and tell them no, or because Glib just doesn't listen to criticism, because after all, they have people watch the videos criticizing them for them. Even with Forbidden Flora, you see them try to do more than they are capable of. They try to cover being asexual or the matter of consent or polyamory, and they never really do anything with it. They never present the part of their argument they don't agree with. Their whole thing of asexuality, for example, more or less comes across as you're only asexual because you haven't gotten dicked good enough.
Hey, you! It might surprise you, but these people are not fit to tackle anything serious whatsoever.
Also, as I have mentioned before, Glib is not a bad artist, and it is honestly rather impressive how many designs they managed to jam into this comic, all with different size, shapes, and penises. Now, there is a very funny screenshot going around of Glib admitting to looking up animal cocks for the sake of their comic, and I gotta say, never have I seen someone doing their homework so thoroughly only to then throw it in the trash. Cause oh my god, I want off this train. There are so many dicks, and not a single one can be considered human. There's an active effort in giving the possum character a possum penis, despite it literally being a thing Lovecraft came up with. Why? If you're going to tell me this is not because you like the idea of fucking these animals as animals, why are you going to such ludicrous lengths to make their junk look the same? Even you, in your own fucking words, say that you hate what you're seeing. If this is supposed to be a tantalizing comic, why the fuck are you including shit you think is disgusting, if not for the sole reason of making it explicitly clear that these are animals? Why is the thing you claim to be so disgusted about showing up multiple times again and again, and one of the times it is being given all the bells and whistles with caressing and whatnot?
Once more, I repeat, ew, no, I don't like animal sex, said the person with the comic explicitly about animal sex.
It's also just really boring, I suppose. Not the X, Jesus Christ, I've never felt so vanilla as when I read this comic. Like, there's characters with 4 tits, characters who make out with their own sentient tail, the fucking egg laying that I keep mentioning, and then there's the constant inflation. Now, going through this comic, this last mentioned one keeps appearing again and again, especially with that little cunt who just shows up to get dicked and then moving on. Cool agency, by the way. But despite this being super exotic, it's all done the same way. Someone gets teased with a penis, then the penis is jammed in all the way. There's a few thrusts, and then the penis hammer finishes inside the receiver, and they blowed up like a balloon. The end. And it is this again, and again, and again. For a comic that is so out there with its fetishes, with its physiology and with the fact that it's a fucking made up magical world where literally everything can happen. The only thing that happens in this comic most of the time is this very thing.
I'm just gonna venture a guess that this is Glib's favorite kink, because it just shows up again and again, and we know for a fact that Glib is rather self-absorbed.
There's also just straight up no doubt in my mind that this is made for zoophiles by zoophiles, and if not, then at the very least by people who are into bestiality in some shape or form. I find it hard to really point at exact things and go, here's the smoking gun, but peruse through Forbidden Flora and you'll see what I mean. It always feels like there's a specific focus on things being the approximate size of a pet dog or cat compared to the partner. Every orifice and organ always seems to be meticulously shaped to mimic that of an animal. The character that gets boned the most is constantly walking around on all fours. There's the egg laying, which is just straight up not a human thing. There's these repeated mentions that keeps reminding you, hey, this is a cat, or hey, this is a goat, or something. And like we've been over before, there are more animal dicks than you'll find on Bad Dragon. Like, despite this being such a fantasy world that is so fantastical that everything should be and is possible, where the sky is the limit to what you can do, it is a curious choice that all creatures keep being oddly animalistic, huh? Even if Glib hadn't admitted to fucking 2 dogs, even if Mal hadn't admitted to participating in zoophilia himself, and even if Evie hadn't defended zoophilia, even if I came into this comic completely unbiased with this knowledge, I would absolutely pick up on the sheer fascination and attraction to animals that this comic has.
This will probably be a good time to remind Glib and their ilk that animals cannot consent. But then again, it hasn't stopped them before.
Also, just one last thing, and then I swear we're gonna move on to Mismatch, cause boy is this becoming a long video. If you thought you could just enjoy Forbidden Flora without, say, insane ramblings about Glib, Evie, and Mal being held accountable with weird confusing art, or long visual novels with dog shit music, then I initially thought you'd be in luck. But nope. Around 2019, just like with Floraverse, Glib just loses their goddamn mind. We are now full on back with the absurd abstract presentation, the terrible visual novels, which yes, still includes routine maintenance, the story was made of Rena's sexual abuse as a child, and all the other things that plagued and ruined Floraverse. Also, you know all those stories? I can count about 5 that were unresolved off the top of my head. Yeah, they're gone. Done. Never resolved. Never seen again. But thank God I can see Voss's inflation fetish porn.
I mean, who gives a fuck about the story, right? I mean, I can sit here and I can look at ugly characters with uglier genitals in what is essentially zoophilic cup porn. Hooray for me!
So, it is finally time to talk about Mismatch, which is about this cat character here called Alice, who is explaining how she went to a special kink brothel in the hopes of being paired up with someone so she can have a nice lay. This brothel seems to specialize in pairing people up so they end up together with people who have a matching kink. And so, Alice ends up getting paired up with this elephant dude called Quillian. Quillian here is a butts man, a classy lad. So he's put on his sheet that he likes butts. Keep this in mind, because this becomes important later on. Anyway, he gets paired up with Alice, and the two quickly start bumping uglies, and not long passes before Alice decides getting fucked in the ass by a penis that is twice the size of her entire body isn't enough to get her off. So she flicks a wand and Quillian is restrained. At no point does Quillian say he wants this. He is in fact saying the opposite. He states, quote, "This is not what I came here for." It is even underlined for fuck's sake. So Alice gets tired of listening to this guy trying to tell her he wants no part of this whole thing and gags him. She then continues to anally sodomize the bound and gagged elephants.
Bear with me, cause it gets worse.
So while Alice does say that Quillian can just wave his trunk around if he wants her to stop, she also taunts him saying, "Oh, if you didn't like this, your penis wouldn't be hard, and shit like that. And it then ends with the two exchanging numbers, but Quillian ends up throwing Alice's number in the trash, and Alice, trying to visit Quillian again, finds out that Quillian had actually given her a wrong address. And the strip then ends with Alice being scolded because she's oh so silly for doing this, as pointed out by this dog thing, Jackie.
I'd like to remind you that if you thought about any of this as rape, then according to Glib, you are a bad actor. So of course I'm going to bring up why they're fucking stupid, cause holy shit.
So, first of all, the comic is called Mismatched, as in most likely referring to the fact that Quillian only had butts on his sheet of things he wanted, and Alice is some sort of super freak from a different sexual dimension, so they probably had everything sans hand-holding on their sheet. The title itself stresses that these two should not have been matched up together with one another. Next is the fact that Quillian actively states he doesn't want this, thus revoking his consent. Next is the fact that he throws Alice's card out. Glib has multiple times tried to state that what Quillian wanted was some power play stuff where Quillian was kind of timid and embarrassed over wanting someone to dominate him in bed, which is why Glib alleges that Quillian actually wanted to get anally sodomized by Alice. Well, if that was the case, wouldn't he have kept the card? And better yet, would he then not have told Alice his real address? And lastly, my two favorite points. The fucking dog character Jackie, or whatever the fuck, explicitly says his kink list was just butts. There was nothing like role reversal or dom or getting reamed hard. And if that wasn't fucking bad enough, Alice straight up says she didn't know what he liked at the time, and we know this because she even asked Quillian about that when they first met. Meaning, this dumb cunt didn't even read Quillian's sheet of what he liked. So Alice tied up, gagged, and fucked this dude in the ass without even knowing whether or not he was into that. Sure, if we give Glib the benefit of the doubt that Quillian did realize he ended up liking it, that does not change the fact that in the moment what was happening was clearly rape. Sexual acts were carried out against a person without their consent.
Hey Google, give me the definition of rape.
According to Wikipedia, rape is a type of sexual assault involving sexual intercourse or other forms of sexual penetration carried out against a person without their consent.
You lousy, scummy, manipulative, lying, two-faced, victim-blaming clown car. How fucking dare you? You have the gall to go on these long rants stating, quote, Alice did nothing that Quillian did not agree with in his consent form. But again, the only thing written there by your own character's admission was butts. Your own character specifically states that there is nothing about being anally reamed, about being domed, nor having his dominating role flipped. And again, Alice states she did not know what Quillian liked twice, indicating they didn't read the fucking form in the first place. You also have the fucking audacity to say, I can definitely see how if someone was feeling uncomfortable and they got tied up and gagged and they didn't feel comfortable expressing a no to someone who is saying just express no and I'll stop, well, that would feel very bad because that would mean someone's not respecting their comfort and they're letting themselves get raped in a situation where someone else may not be doing that to them.
I could give two shits whether or not you're featuring rape in your comic. I mean, who the fuck am I, the big Berserk fan, to get on your shit for that? But it's the fact that you're actively defending it. It is the fact that you're saying that people are letting themselves get raped. It is the fact that you're calling everyone who are calling you out on this bullshit bad people. And sure, the comic is from 6 years ago, but those comments of yours are from this fucking month. Seriously, no cap, no glasses, no Rise or YouTube persona here. Glib, what the fuck is wrong with you?
The writing is a 2. This is terrible. It is absolutely a comic universe with a ton of lore, but the presentation is so terrible it is fighting tooth and nail to prevent you from enjoying it. The art is a 5. The art isn't bad, and there are in fact places where it's pretty great, but the presentation just gets in the way of stuff so fast. Glib is a competent artist, but in no shape or form a good comic artist. The characters are a 4. I hate this because I actually kind of dig a lot of the characters, but I just don't get to enjoy them, and the ones I do get to enjoy are boring and bland. Forbidden Flora is a 3. It is actually a more enjoyable read than Floraverse simply because it is more comprehensible, but it also makes me uncomfortable and disgusted multiple times when it probably wasn't supposed to. All in all, Floraverse and Forbidden Flora both get a 3. Floraverse feels like a comic that knew what it wanted at first, but lost its identity along the way, and ended up becoming the creator's own crack-fueled Venn art mixed with wish fulfillment on acid. The worst part is that even if you want to give it a shot, you will be hard-pressed to do so, as this comic only really makes sense to its own sick creators. Give this a pass and bleach it from your mind.
I don't cry a whole lot. During the writing of this script, my dad actually got a blood clot in his leg. Don't worry, he's fine. But when we got those news, I didn't shed a tear. But when I saw that I was done with reading Floraverse, I actually cried a little bit in sheer relief that I did not have to go through any more of this terrible garbage. Seriously, do not read this comic. I implore you. Don't give this comic attention. Don't give these people money. Bleach it from your mind. Instead, spread awareness of the toxic shit these people are doing, about the people they're hurting, and about the crimes that they are committing. And Glib, this one goes out personally to you. If any of this upsets you, why do you not lament that my own suicide attempt failed, you absolute miserable cunt? I'll see you guys at the next webcomic relief. Take care.
Everybody knows somebody with something to hide. Sister headed out on a Friday. Black enough she wouldn't remember. Grandma wouldn't hurt a fly, but back in her day all she had a bad temper. Always getting high in the bathroom. Dark thoughts, I was flirting with surrender evermore. And I made a best friend out of the elephant that's in the room. Cause I figured, oh, hey, maybe just ignore it, it'll go away. Keep it in the family for today, everybody.
And that is Floraverse and Forbidden Flora. What an absolute fucking shit show. This has not been fun to do. Let me just put that right out there. This comic sucks and these people suck even worse. So, yeah. I am not in any hurry to cover shit like this again. And that leads neatly into the fact that, in case you have not noticed, this is the season finale of this season of the Webcomic Relief. And just like any other, gap between seasons, I'm going to take a small break where I look at Webcomic Relief and see what needs changing, what needs updating, and all that stuff. So, yeah, stay tuned, and guess I'll surprise you with whatever comes next. Or maybe I won't change a whole lot. I mean, the show looks great now, but, I'm always up for making it look better. We have also opened the Discord again, so now people can join that again, so please check it out if you are not already in the Discord. We closed it down because we didn't want any of the Floraverse fans to come in during the documentary series, but now we are finally opening the doors back up again, so please come and say hi.
And with that, it's time to go into the amazing people who helped sponsoring this video. Amocin. Amocin wants me to push their husband's book called Scales of Fate, The Chosen Prince. Amidst a realm of dragons and destiny, a tale of forbidden love unfolds. Watch as passion and power collide, challenging a young dragon prince to choose between the call of his heart and the duty to his crown. Will love triumph in a world bound by ancient prophecies? Check out the book and find out. Asholon Prime. Asholon hasn't gotten back to me about what they want me to push, so just know that they're freaking amazing. Send them some love if you can. Nicholas Knudson just keeps not wanting to send me stuff if they want me to push, so yeah, they're just an honorary cool dude. Rojaru. Rojaru has finally taken the plunge into making comics, and you can now catch the 16-page prologue he made for the Sweet 16 comic contest on the Newgrounds site, which he plans to continue as his full comic. Please show him some love and check out the comic. Sebastian Venborg. Sebastian wants me to push the Twitter account Curious Zelda, which has a rich plethora of cute and funny cat images. He doesn't own the account or anything, but he just likes cats, so there you go. Afly. Afly hasn't gotten back to me either about what they want me to push, so you know the drill, they're just super awesome and deserve all the love. Hugo Junstrand. It's frigging time. My boy Hugo has finally announced his original series Torch Drop. It's a fantasy story where animals steal body parts from other species. It's still being produced, but you can check out the trailer in the description and see the amazing stuff Hugo has in store for you. DR. DR is the artist behind the cool sci-fi comic called Martial Star. If you want some good old sci-fi western action presented with some banging art, then this is the comic for you. Why Not Warrior? Why Not Warrior wants me to push the webcomic known as Hope. The comic is about superheroes that gets into trouble and who has to save the universe from an evil empire known only as Spade. When the young girl Raylan gets targeted by this evil empire, she joins forces with her friends to take them down and save the galaxy. And of course, let's not forget to mention all these lovely people. Asofs, Caesar Sealat, Drake of Adrian, KH Varfield, Nina Ha, Satya Sketchy, Shiv, The Bonsai, and Varatri. And also a super huge thank you to all the lovely people that you see here. If you want to support the show, please go to my Patreon. Here you can donate anything you want every month and you'll get a ton of awesome rewards for it. Just go to www.patreon.com/Riser2eyes. If you want to watch me on Twitch, you can do so at twitch.tv/crownlessking, and that's with 2 eyes as well. Here you'll sometimes see dumb stuff like this happen.
She totally pained Liam's nails. You know what? I think like that's actually oh my god, what the fuck? That's not a fucking rat, that's a goddamn dog.
If you don't want to support the show financially, at least think about liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or sharing your favorite Webcomic Relief episode with your friends. I'll see you guys in the next season of the Webcomic Relief. Take care.